Hello, so I'm Megan Gilbert and I'm back with the second installment of my little videos about uranium. So I've been doing videos concerning Cold Case North, which is a book about the disappearance of Jim Brady and Abby Halkett. And somebody had left a comment in the comments section of the first video asking questions about uranium in the Athabasca Basin. So my first video was essentially about where uranium's found on Earth and why we have uranium on Earth. And essentially the answer to that was in the mantle. And so this second video is basically going to be about where uranium is found in deposits on Earth's crust. So, if you know why it accumulates in deposits that are maybe economic is a good way to put that. So I once again made a presentation. So this is the Athabasca Basin, and this just shows you some of the more well-known deposits. So the well-known deposits are in the little square boxes, and so you can see MacArthur River, Moore Lake, Cigar Lake, blah 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 blah. So the Athabasca Basin is incredibly rich in uranium, and there are reasons for that. So basically like anything on Earth, there's reasons why you find things where you do. It's not random. There's always a reason, and as science kind of progresses through understanding our Earth more and understanding the world more, we basically come to the realization that there are mechanisms behind why everything is the way it is. And so it's not random that we find uranium here in the Athabasca Basin. So you're probably thinking, well, why is that? Well, first of all, if we're going to talk about uranium, I should probably stop and say, there's only a handful of countries in the world that actually have economic uranium. Saskatchewan in Canada has the highest grade uranium deposits in the world here in the Athabasca Basin. Kazakhstan and Australia also have very high grade uranium deposits. This is actually not the only place in Saskatchewan where we find uranium. So the Athabasca Basin, yes, obviously we also found it, as we just learned in the last videos. It can be found in certain types of granites, but it's very, very specific granites that you find that in. But you can also find it just randomly in some of the Cretaceous or some of the deposits that we have from like all kinds of ages. And that typically, once again, there's actual reasons for that. So typically, so for instance, in Saskatchewan, down in southwest Saskatchewan in the Cypress Hills, there's actually 2% uranium deposits in some of the places down there, and the reason for that is because uranium tends to deposit in sandstones. So if that's obviously a mechanism, it's starting to make sense why there's maybe some uranium in the Athabasca Basin. So this right here is a Google Maps version of the Athabasca Basin, and you can kind of see that if you trace it, that's the part of it that's quite sandy. So everything else around it is actually Precambrian Shield. So as we can see in here, this is all different parts of the Precambrian Shield. So the Precambrian Shield is made up of igneous rocks and metamorphic rocks, which tend to be very, very hard. And rocks that are, not made, haven't been beaten and broken up and made into particles yet. So that would be what a sandstone is. A sandstone is a rock that has been beaten and broken up and was sand and is now a stone because it's been lithified, which is just a fancy science word which means turned to stone. So this is essentially the whole Athabasca Basin is this essentially like a bathtub full of sand. And if you look at it in cross section, so this is like if you took a cake slice through the Athabasca Basin. So this is the northwest and this is the southeast. This is all Precambrian Shield in here that you can see at the very, very bottom down in here. And this right here is the actual sands of the Athabasca Basin. So you can see that it's basically just a bowl full of sand. And there's a lot of different minerals and energy resources that tend to occur in sands. And that's because sand has certain properties that kind of lend itself well for minerals or energy resources like oil or natural gas to pool in them, basically, or to congregate or to form in them. So sand is a good candidate for this because it essentially is just a whole bunch of little particles that has a lot of space between them. So naturally things will just kind of want to settle in them. So whether it's water, oil, or uranium, that's just kind of why sand is a really good conduit or a really good, you know, kind of placeholder for these kind of economic resources. So it's because of this pore space. So this would be like a grain of sand, and this is the space between those grains of sand. So it holds things really well. You know, as far as the you know, surface of the earth goes, it's kind of like a bathtub for different kinds of for different things, including water. So essentially what ends up happening in the Athabasca Basin is you have this sand sitting on top of, you know, hard Precambrian Shield rock. And a lot of that Precambrian Shield rock in the Athabasca Basin region is actually these granite bodies that would be full of uranium. And so what ends up happening is that you have a lot of water that ends up kind of pooling in the bottom of the basin, basically, because it's sand, and that water will essentially pick up uranium, and it will travel preferentially along that surface between the sandstone and the Precambrian Shield. So this would be the Precambrian Shield down here in the sand. It'll preferentially flow along that line, which we call an unconformity in geology, which means it's just a place where you're missing time, basically. If you want to know what an unconformity is, I can make videos on that too. But it's basically just a surface that has a big contrast, and the contrast is between like this hard crystal rock and this sand. And so the fluid will flow in here, and it'll preferentially just pick up the uranium and then deposit it along that contact. Another thing it'll do is that there's a whole bunch of breaks. I don't know if I actually can show you. Did I put that in here? Yeah, well, like this. There's a whole bunch of, you know, faults, we call them. It's where the rock is broke catastrophically, usually due to some sort of, you know, squeezing process. It causes it to break kind of like a plate. And that water will also preferentially kind of move along those breaks and deposit uranium in them. So that would be like a fault-hosted uranium deposit, as opposed to an unconformity hosted uranium deposit, which is that last example that I gave you. So whenever you hear people, like maybe you hear geologists or economists or whatever, they're talking about unconformity related deposits, that's like the uranium that'll pool between the metamorphosed rock of the Precambrian Shield and the sandstone. And so that's what that is. And then you'll hear fault hosted, which is when that water kind of preferentially travels along those breaks and deposits uranium along those breaks. And so that's why we can kind of predict where we're going to find uranium, what kind of deposits we might find them along, and that's why it's not random. So essentially, you know, in the Athabasca Basin, you have a lot of uranium just kind of hanging out in the water in some of these areas. So, and also like a lot of it comes to the surface as well. So, you know, regardless, you do just kind of have uranium kind of laying out on the surface even naturally, and that's just the reality of kind of how it works. So that's all that I really have planned to talk about. So if any of you have any questions or comments about that, please feel free to leave them in the comments section, and I'll answer whatever it is that you want to know. So until next time, I guess I'll talk to you later.